Okay, so to start with the topic, since Sobia has already mentioned the title of the proposition, um, first I would like to introduce myself first of the kind of research work I have been involved till now and what are my keen interests so that I can put you in a perspective that what exactly I'm looking for in the research. So both from my undergraduate and then postgraduate and then my work experience, and again I have come back in teaching. So um, the constant line of thread which I have always been involved is the construction systems. And when I'm saying a construction system, I'm saying, so it is not just any particular construction detail I'm talking about. I'm not talking about any particular method of construction. So it's actually all of it when I'm talking about a construction system. It's right from the beginning of uh, material, material at with its physical, with its the physical properties, the chemical properties, the science of being the rigidity, the malleability of a material, starting from there till the building application, who are the people at every stage of that material processes and construction and manufacture. These are the people who get involved, the artisans, the skill, the craftsmen, the entrepreneurs, how it is getting applied in building, what happens when the application is over and it's under usage, what happens when it's done its entire life, it's complete, then what happens after that. So I'm not looking at a very particular material or a very particular method of construction. I'm looking at a construction system as a whole, as a process. And the inclination that I'm coming from is how every place, how every people are getting involved in formulating this construction as a system. And sometimes there are additions, sometimes there are deletions, sometimes there is evolution, sometimes there is new interpretation of the old, sometimes it is futuristic. So it's a constant changing aspects of the construction system, which I am interested and which that's my keen area of interest that I'm looking for. So for today's presentation, I tried to narrow down as much as possible. And so today I'm starting with the contemporization of traditional construction system, building new. I will go into the detail of explaining what this title is. But before I move to the details of my presentation, I request some of you to help me in identifying what's happening in these images. I need some volunteers if someone can pitch in. So there are two images that are there in front of us. On the left-hand side, it's actually a painting of two identical buildings. They are real buildings. The paintings is actually done in 1850. And it's actually a residential, it's a house. And it was an exposed brickwork in New Orleans, and these two buildings were identical. The right-hand side of the image is exactly these two same buildings, but in 1993. And you see certain things have changed. There's a lot of years that have passed, and certain things we see there are changes. Can someone please help in identifying what are these changes? What are the things which changed and what are the things which did not change? Anyone, if anything in terms of material, finish, any kind of elements that have been added, deleted?
Srijani, I'm not from architecture, but what I can look at is that, I mean, I could see a floor, addition of a floor, the incline on the top is gone, balconies are added. So there is some change in the facade, as I can see. The windows are there, the basic structure remains the same, but yeah, there's an extension to the building on the right. There's a connection, interconnection that I can see, or a gate in between the two buildings. There's some plantation that has happened, a bit of it in the front. So
Yes.
yeah.
And then something you said that thank you for your response first of all, but yeah, you said that there are certain things which is it has not changed and which you think that it still remain the same. The basic instinct says that yes, it is still the same, but few additions have been done. So if I try to analyze these two images, these are the images which I have taken from How Buildings Learn by Brant Stewart. So I want to start my presentation with these two images, which says that over a period of time, and whether knowingly or unknowingly, we make certain layers, certain additions in terms of layers to each of these buildings. When we take this decision, why we take this decision, where should I start taking the decision that I need to intervene the change like this and not like this, like the addition of floors, the extension horizontally, extension vertically. The basic window patterns remain the same. The basic structural remain the same, but I will add a few balcony. I will add few maybe the requirement of ornamentation. And if you see in balcony, there are these wrought iron railing that have been placed, which is also tells us that I have moved ahead in time in terms of the evolution of a material. I don't have to make a typical pillar and a column like of structure. I have the option and I can change to a different material. So there are certain these changes, and also and just to put you in a context, this was a residential purely in 1850, and the one on the right hand side, the image in 1993, it's actually the typology has also changed, and your ground floor has become more commercialized, and that's why you have a distance in front of your building to have these exchanges, commercial exchanges, and on the top of them are residences, and that's why more ornamentation has been added on the upper layers. So very consciously decision has been taken कि यहीं पर changes करने हैं, यहाँ नहीं करने हैं, यहाँ पर material new introduce करना है, the wall finishes changes, which says that it actually arises a lot of questions. So when I started my inquiry, when I started with my journey in research, I had a lot of queries. I'm trying to narrow down, but the first and the foremost thing that I was trying to understand, that is architecture really a permanent? When we say that, हम कहते हैं कि अच्छा हम अपने लाइफ में एक बार ही तो घर बनाते हैं, मजबूती से घर बनाते हैं, हमारा फाउंडेशन ऐसा होना चाहिए, हमारी दीवार ऐसी होनी चाहिए, मेरा ऐसा मटेरियल होना चाहिए, and we put a lot of hard work, and it's not just about residents. We talk about the institutions, we talk about public buildings. I don't make parliament every day. It is an image of an entire nation which parliament shows as an image in front of us. So we don't make a building thinking कि ये तो बदल जाएगा, or it is bound to change. We approach built environment, we approach architecture with permanence, but is actually architecture is permanent? Do we see it being constant along the timeline? Then there are other set of questions that I was looking at, that are buildings designed to adapt? I know people will change, the cultural changes will be there, economic changes will be there, my aspirational changes will be there, but still, do I leave that scope in a building that people can adapt? Buildings can adapt, not people. Can buildings adapt to this changing aspiration, need, cultural associations with that? Do I leave that room? Why buildings change over time? So what are the factors which impact that I have thought, I have put up so much energy, time and effort, and I have designed each and every space thinking कि ये तो 50 साल 100 साल मेरे ये buildings होंगे, but वो change होते हैं. Is change inevitable? Then why don't I keep the room of buildings to keep adapting? I still design the building as a permanent. What changes first? Whenever we see these changes, where do we see these changes first start reflecting? Is it the form or is it the function? पहले usage of the space बदलता है या form of the space बदलता है? First in the building, where we see, it's the structural part of it, or is it the materiality part of it? Is it about the building envelope where we start seeing and not the inner space of the building? And we always had this debate, form follows function, function follows form, what comes first and what comes. What I was trying to understand was, yes, form and function has its own debate and own views of it, but is people putting up their aspirational needs first and then making the building, or the building is asking that I need to be of this form, I need to be of this function, and people will keep adapting, people will keep changing with the built environment. So I was thinking of the debate between the form function versus people, and not between the form and function. Does building tell the story of past, or it tells the possibility of a future? I am in present. I know the building in front of me. I know the building is how it is supposed to function. But we learn so much from our past, the buildings, the traditional buildings, the vernacular buildings, the kind of traditional knowledge these buildings have in terms of climate, disaster, building usage. It's the most optimized way, and it always say that it keeps telling the story of the past, but it also tells about the possibility of the future. So these are the few set of questions that I actually started with, and the questions will start weaving in as I proceed further in the presentation. But and something after a reading, something that I wonder, and I come up with something else, and I wonder, and then I again try to come back, and I keep reminding myself that this phrase from Winston Churchill, which says that we shape our buildings and afterwards buildings shape us. We take a lot of energy, we put a lot of effort, not I'm saying from an architect's point of view, but from any user point of view, that we keep so much thought that how my building, how my space should be. And after a certain period of time, these buildings do form an opinion for us, and we again get influenced by the building. And that creates the possibility of a future. So it is like a cyclic movement. It is something that we keep on, it is again the chicken egg situation. We are shaping the buildings, or the buildings are shaping us afterwards. So which is the first and the second is very difficult to identify, but it's a cyclic process that we are in this wheel, and it's been happening over years. So the research question that I am putting forward for this proposition is, how does the evolution of construction systems reshapes the social and cultural sense of belongingness for the people. So every time the construction systems changes, upgrades, there is a chain of evolution that is happening. It keeps reshaping us. And it keeps reshaping us in terms of the social and cultural awareness of our place. The moment I'm just giving an example what I mean by a sense of belongingness or the social and cultural. So, for example, if you enter Kerala and the kind of materials you use, the vernacular systems that you use, the Mangalore tiles, the kind of thatch roofing, the kind of massing of these buildings, it already starts giving you a response of the place I am, and I start responding to it. I will not relate to an image from a millennium city of Gurgaon. I will not do that, because there is that sense of belongingness that I have established by looking at the built environment, how people have responded to it. So the three words that I will keep focusing as I move forward is the evolution of construction system, the reshaping part of it, the cyclic process that I was telling about, and finally, the sense of belongingness. What evokes us the sense of belongingness? So this is my research question. From here, if I start breaking down my research, the first part of my research is, of course, what I am doing, and a basic inquiry. What are the things I have in my hand? What are the things I do not have in my hand? And there is a gap, what I'm looking for. The second part of my presentation will talk about why even I'm talking about it, why it is so valuable, why it is relevant to talk about it. The third and the fourth part is not very much fully developed because the idea is still in process. It is yet to be detailed out, but I will still share some of my my way ahead, that how I'm thinking of proceeding, and this research, who are the takers for this research, who is it meant for, and who will benefit from this. So basic introduction, background, the kind of work I'm envisioning to do, and finally the conclusion. So what we know as of today. So first thing we understood from the examples and whatever we have talked till now is that buildings do change. The building maybe in physicality is permanent, but the nature of a building is supposed to change. It cannot be stagnant, and maybe if it is stagnant, that's where its values start decreasing and it becomes redundant. But buildings are bound to change, it will change. And through Vetriven triad that we always keep referring to in architecture is we see these changes typically in these three areas, which is the functional adequacy, the structural adequacy, and the beauty. Either I will make changes in the building to fulfill certain additional functional requirements, which maybe it was not earlier envisioned for, it was not catered for, or something unexpected happened and I need to cater that functional requirement. There is a structural adequacy. So something that was possible in timber, I cannot do it right now, or maybe the availability of the material is not there, I have to switch to something else. So there is a structural adequacy that I will respond to. And beauty is again very subjective, but it is very important, very evident, and we have always seen the neoclassical style, modern history, postmodern history. We can see every history that we want to look at the architecture, Indian, Western. Beauty is one of the aspects that we definitely look in architecture. The second thing we know is buildings constantly refine and are reshaped by the user. So as I was talking about, it's a cyclic process. So, sorry, let me just put the pointer. So the first is the building construction system. So I thought of these buildings, these materials, these are construction systems, and we will see certain changes. The changes can be either very sudden or they can be a very gradual change. As I said, the changes can be in any of the form, the functional, the structural, the beauty. The changes can be in any of these forms, and they can be so gradual that we don't even see it's happening. And sometimes it is so sudden. Sudden can be in terms of the political changes, India being independent, and there is a sudden change in a very conscious effort of deviating the path. And that's where we see it's not sudden. I don't mean it's a sudden. Today, it's also a decade, but sudden. And sometimes it is long. And this in turn, again, you see the change in 10 years or you see the change in 30 years or 50 years, it redefines how we perceive the cultural and the social association with that place. It reforms. I will give certain examples in the next slide, but and we don't evidently highlight it, or we don't apprise it, we don't acknowledge it that yes, the change has happened because it has been so gradual. And that makes a beginning of a new era. That makes sense that now I have a new definition of this place, a new definition of my belongingness, and that creates a new image of the place. So we are aware of this cyclic process, but I'm just highlighting, yes, it does happen. Sometimes it happens so evidently, and sometimes they are so gradual that we can't pinpoint on it. I will show certain example. Then the third aspect is the economic part of it. It is very well known that we spend more in changing the building rather than building a new one. The repair, the restoration part is always the more heavy on budget. And in doing that, sometimes we also lose the cultural value. We always say that when there is a building, you spend so much in the structure is the main part of the budget that we spend on. Then is the services, and then the last layer is of the spaces which are there inside. So we see कि अच्छा हमारा ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा spending तो हमारे structures में हो रहा है. But if I see in the entire duration of my life cycle of that building, it's not the structure, it's not the services where where the money is spent. The money is spent in the maintaining, the repairing, or the prolonged usage of that space. So we are aware of these three facts. So this is one example from Uttarakhand. Actually, there are two examples that I want to bring in front of you, but I have a picture of one. But so this is a beautiful piece of architecture expressing Koti Banal, the method of construction, the cross bracing of wooden. I think all the Himalayan region, we see this method of construction very evident. As you go up, the structure becomes lighter and the base becomes wider, but it is lighter as compared. It's a very good example of earthquake resistance in Himalayan region, in hilly areas. This is example from Uttarakhand, which is in the Bhadkot district of Uttarakhand. This is a building which is around 400 years old. And the building is currently, so this is actually a residence, but currently the building is not used as for residential purpose. Since it's in Uttarakhand and Bhadkot got the attention of a tourist place, so there is Darya Bugyal, which is used for trekking. So it's this is the nearest village to that, and there are tourists who come in and stay. So now it is currently being used for the accommodation purpose. None of the building in this particular region has the same kind of architecture. I think they were able to restore only this one particular building, which is became a tourist attraction, and all the people who go for trekking, they come here, rest for a day, and then they move ahead in the next region. It has become like a pit stop, but none of the houses around that, they are all performing concrete construction, though it's a Himalayan region. It's quite at a higher altitude, and the entire neighborhood the entire community has forgotten this style of architecture, but they have retained only the one which is not even serving their purpose. It is serving for the economic purpose, to show a tourist that this is how we live, this is how we say. So again, I'm saying maybe they have done the changes in the functional adequacy. They have refilled the structure. They have tried to achieve the beauty. They have changed the use. They have also changed the construction systems in the houses where they live. So they are moving towards the concrete construction, but where the tourists are saying that's still Koti Banal style of construction which is being followed. What does this mean? It means that every time we are allowing a change, we are setting a new stone for next set of generation to come and understand that this is how the residence is supposed to be, and this is how a tourist attraction spot should be. I have labeled two different typology with two different construction systems, and it sets the precedence for the next generation to take up like this. And that's I'm saying the change is very gradual. The change might be very sudden, but there is change, and the change impacts the setting up the sense of belongingness for that place. Today we see one village following the construction system and one being of the traditional. The proportions might go forward from here. Another example of this particular region only, where they have used temples are, I think, the greatest example where I can say that cultural precedence is placed before. That's the first thing that comes. But now, due to in a hilly region, since cutting of the trees is not allowed above 1,000 meters above the sea level, so they are not allowed to touch their own forest. And all the wood which is being cut is actually go down to Dehradun and Haldwani. They buy the wood from there and they come back. So actually, the wood which is used to actually was free of cost for them. It was their own natural resource, their own heritage for them. The forests are their own. That's their own place. Now they have to pay twice, travel to Haldwani, get the wood and come back, and then build their temple. And temple, again, they have a lot of their cultural associations that these are the kind of trees they can use. This is how the log, the width, and so now since there is unavailability of the wood, they have switched to the a concrete-based construction system. But since Uttarakhand has that you take Devi out of the temple, you take a round of this, you come back again and you reinstall again, and there's whole procedure that the entire that settlement follows. So what they do, that they no longer make a concrete beam slab the way we understand. They mimic the use of wood, and they cast the way we have wooden battens, and the construction systems are made through that. They replicate it in a concrete, and they have these isolated sections of beam and a column, and they do the joinery as the wooden joinery, जैसे हम करते हैं tongue and groove joints में उसको बिठाते हैं. They do exactly the same joinery in concrete. So because again, the cultural precedents, my choice of material has changed. I will do the change in the construction system, and the entire the ritual, the cultural practice changes, and that sets a new norm for the next generation to take up. So this is one example from Uttarakhand. This is another example from Bhutan, which we did as a part of OCI study trip in Sushant School of Art and Architecture with the second-year students, and it was such a I don't know if the word is right. It's such a moment of frustration where you see that a residence, an institution, a school building, you can't differentiate. They all look the same. And whatever the typology it is, whatever the scale of the building it is, it will go to as much detail of a house and to the institution. It's more of a standardization. It states that there is a norm set. This is how the usage of the building material and construction system has to be to build the image of the place. And this is how it has to be done. So it's all set in norms. So one is very directive. The one example that I took from Uttarakhand was more intuition based. I don't have the material, so I will replace it. I don't have those kind of people who can afford to maintain the houses, so they are switching to concrete based construction, even though in the hilly region it's not suitable. So one is intuitively done, one is very evidently directively done. So this is the second example of from Bhutan. Again, where are the gaps? What are the things that we still don't know? And I would like, as a part of my research query, I would like to know, is material and construction techniques dependent or independent of building type? As my typology dictates the choice of material construction techniques, dependent or independent? Is building system is reflection of image of a place, or image of a place is a reflection of choice of building system that is adopted? Again, the chicken egg situation, what comes first? What leads to the other? Are building envelopes the most active interface between human and building to depict the changes? Again, where we start seeing the changes. So stating the problem, act of contemporization, contemporizing construction system impacts the change in community, or the aspiration of the community dictates the evolution of construction systems in building. So through the research, what I aim to determine is how the evolution of construction system adapts the traditional knowledge system of a building and reshapes the social and cultural sense of belongingness. The overall approach of the research will be an objective-based approach, where I will use the interpretive method for the first part of my research, which talks about the evolution. Second part, which talks about the who shapes what impacts the other. I will use the correlation method in the research, which will be circumstances, and it will depend upon a lot of archival information. Why are we talking about it? So we understand that anything that you bring change, you are able to do because either you have an advanced technology, either you have money to spend, and third is you have an aspiration. And I think that is something that you cannot stop having an aspiration. When a building stock changes, and which is the reason where it actually declines, it becomes devoid of its value, is first, you don't, it actually, the poverty in terms, not just in terms of money, but I don't see the value of upgrading. Or there is some kind of calamity where I cannot revive beyond it. And of course, we know that a good obsolete design forces a good new design to come. And since it's a cyclic process, and as I said, we are stuck in this chicken and egg situation. So here I would like to say it's an act and the impact. There is a certain actions and there is a certain set of impact. And it is a to and fro relation. It's not a linear relation. So the act of choosing the right material, the act of choosing the right construction system, the act of choosing the right function, these are the certain decisions that we take. These are the certain actions that we take. And then there is a certain set of impact, which, many a times it doesn't come in front of us. The impact of behavior of people, the impact on the culture of the community, the impact on the sense of association, impact on building a new image of a place. And this can keep on happening. We can do an hierarchization, we can do rationalization, we can do prioritization. I think running out of time, but I try to summarize this. What value it brings to us? I'm being constantly saying that it brings a sense of belongingness, but where is this sense of belongingness stems from? And it is something which is very intangible. It is something that you cannot measure in quantity, that this is my degree of belongingness. So actually, this is still under discussion. I don't know if I will be able to proceed on this. So there are two theories that we know. The PERMA model, which is the theory of happiness by Dr. Martin Seligman, which it says that there is a certain level of emotional engagement which is required. And definitely, we have seen examples, a lot of examples, Louis Kahn, Peter Zumthor, who have tried exponentially dealing with building material to evoke that sense of achievement, to evoke a positive emotion, to evoke people to engage with them. And then there is another model of Maslow's, the theory of hierarchy of need. When is this change very evident? When is the changes stop? When in this level it start happening evidently? And the correlation of the building material with either one of the again, I have not shortlisted. I don't know. It's as I proceed ahead, I will be able to narrow it further. But definitely, building material has a lot of value and impact on these models, and the relationship have been explored in the past. It is doable. I think the last bit of it, how part of it, that again, the part 3 and part 4, as I said, it's still the research idea is still under process, so not much clarity in this, and hope as I move ahead I will be. But one thing in evolution that I know it matters a lot is the typology. Am I looking a public building which actually builds the image of the nation? Am I looking at a very religious aspect which is key to that society? Then the second part is the time period of influence, where I'm looking at. I need to narrow these down, I know, and then I have also to focus down a particular geography to talk about this evolution, which will help in strengthen my stand. Currently, my focus has been on the Himalayan region because that's what my area of interest has come from. Reshaping part of it, we know that, we start seeing these changes at various levels, the skin, the structure, the service, where it happens first, and what is the correlation. And through correlation method, I will evaluate the evolution and the reshaping part of it. And then the sense of belongingness, I will test again the two theories, still under process. So finally, what I would like to conclude is knowledge or what research will actually help us in developing an alternative vocabulary of a building, or it will help us to know that if a building is moving and it is inevitable for a change, it is bound to change. What are the things I need to keep in mind? What are the things I have to keep them loose ends? Where are the things I need to tie those ends? I have to, and this kind of, this guideline will actually help me to see the relationship between the construction system and the community without losing the traditional knowledge system, And also it helps in developing a new vocabulary for which helps in building the new image of that city. Of course, further research is needed to understand people, behavior, and psychological association with the material and the construction. That's how I would like to end my presentation. Thank you. I'm sorry for overshooting.
Thanks a lot, Srijani. Thank you for showing us a different or a new perspective or approach towards built environment. Now we can move on to, we can open the forum for discussion and question and answer sessions. So anybody who has any question or want to discuss with Srijani is most welcome. They can write in the chat box also, or they can have their question directly answered by Srijani as well.
Shobhya, can I?
Sure, Professor.
Hi, Srijani.
Fine.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. I have a question about, because there was this intermixing of different images which you were using. Some of them were adapted, some of them were these incrementally added upon or changed. What would be the focus of your research? Would you be looking at construction systems? How, you know, there was a traditional system, and now if a contemporary building is envisioned, is there a change in the construction system, or are you focusing on heritage or historic buildings only, and going to see the change in that and change in construction system, knowledge system in that? What would be your subject?
Again, as I said, the research is still under the process of sifting through the details, but yes, something that I am sure of it, that I am looking not for any particular, I'm not looking for any particular building, or I'm not looking at a particular a building. I'm looking at a place, a settlement, and a very traditionally rooted, so that it's not that one building that creates the impact. It's when you start seeing the changes from one building to 10 to a one's own settlement, that's where you start understanding the trend of changes. So first, I am looking at a very traditional rooted cities. From there, the way the sampling of the buildings, or again, as I said, the timeline matters. That's where I will start mapping these changes. So it may not be the historical, but it has to be traditional, where the traditional style is very rooted in that.
So you would not exclude any contemporary structures that might have come up in that same city. You will not exclude that from your study, you're saying?
No.
Yeah. So
I will not exclude that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Tapasya. Do we have any other question?
Something.
Sorry, Mark. Please go ahead. No, Mark.
Yeah, Srijan, yeah, sorry. No, I love the passion with which you're approaching this. But are you also going to look into something like that? But what role to?
I can't hear you, Mark, sir.
Oh, okay.
Your voice is breaking. I'm not able to hear.
Okay. Oh, yeah. No, my question was, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
My question was, what role do codes and bylaws, building codes and such regulations play in the evolving of such buildings? And do they contribute to it, or do they hold things back, or
I
so that's
think
really the question: is what role do regulations play in all of this?
yes. So I have thought about it, and I also have came across the examples. Building bylaws play a lot of role in dictating where we are heading towards. What's my approach? What my stand? And so it definitely impacts. On one hand, I have that example of Bhutan, where to every detail of the facade, to the cornice, to the window, to the roof, material, method of application, everything has been detailed out. But it doesn't give you the room of expanding. It doesn't give you the room of experimenting. It doesn't even give you the room of the change that I was saying, the social and the cultural belongingness to the place. It keeps evolving, and so the building should evolve. So somewhere the ROMs are that restrictive that you cannot bend, you cannot move around, and sometimes the bylaws, as I said, we know the buildings are bound to change, but are we leaving a room for that? And those rooms are not even allowed through the building bylaws, and I think it should be incorporated there. So it plays a very important role.
Thanks. Yeah, I think so too. I mean, so there is this thing where one needs to really engage and recognize that buildings are going to change, and
Yeah, I think
that's-
Mark's voice again.
somebody else wanted to that. Wow. Yeah, I know. Okay, I think somebody else had a question.
Thank you, Mark, sir, for the Parul ma'am, I think.
I just one. I was just wondering, Srijani, that this whole idea of sense of belongingness is, of course, a complex, kind of a thing to come to terms with in any case. So would you be then, in picking out whether it's cases or whether it's the area, the geographical, whatever kind of a time frame or space frame that you'll pick up. I wonder, I mean, would you be looking at demography trends, migration trends and all as an important factor? Because I think that makes a huge amount of difference in, because a lot of villages, you see a lot of out migration has happened. And also when you look at the older generation and the younger generation and the children, so you would see that the attitudes and the kind of sense of belongingness and the aspirations, like you mentioned in your first box, are very different with respect to places which are sort of facing a lot of out migration versus places which are not facing out migration. So, I mean, I just thought that's an important thing to factor in when you're probably looking at where to position your research. I think that's.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, and it impacts the research, of course, a lot. And in fact, when I was talking about Uttarakhand, and when I was visiting these villages, the main reason why they have shifted to today's modern construction techniques, even though the artisans are not skilled to do concreting, the curing part of it, but the main reason is that a lot of army soldiers, and they come from these villages and they get recruited in them, and in a year or maybe 5 years में एक महीने की छुट्टी लेकर आते हैं, they come back to the village and they have that 1 month of time to do all the repair work, new house to be made. And so it's that short period of time, and you cannot do that with timber, you cannot do with any other material, you have to do the concrete thing. So So there are many times, though there is a lot of migration, that people are moving out of it, and that's also the reason why most of the villages are turning into ghost villages in Uttarakhand. But it impacts a lot in deciding what the construction technique should go and what is more suitable. Whereas another example that we have seen in Bhutan was people were migrating and there was a lot of support from the government. You can go for higher education, you can go for a job opportunity, but you have to come back and serve the nation again. So they were bound to come back. So, so again, I'm saying the bylaws, how the place defines for you also plays a lot of role in dictating these kind of construction systems to put in place. Either allow it to evolve, either it allows you to get stagnant, either devoid of it. But yes, that's a very important aspect, and I will keep that in mind.
Right. And also, this whole, like you mentioned, when people move out and they come back, and whether it's the army or whether it's for education. So I think it's this whole question of sense of belongingness is really, really, it is very tricky and complex. And again, parameters like levels of education and what kind of education, formal, informal, those again would be, I'm sure they'll appear as important, factors which are going to. So here in this case, I think the important aspect, because the sense of belongingness is something that is hinged in the people, and then there is this dimension of the physicality, and then there is this dimension of the people. So I think that's another thing that probably, it'll be good to find the balance as to whether the buildings are your cases or the people are your cases. So just keep that in mind also when you work out your methodology.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. Good work.
Thank you.
We have another question from Emin sir. He's asking, what are your observations between urbanized areas, remote areas, and extremely remote areas when it comes to your research?
I would like to qualify that question a little bit. Basically, the moment you go very deep inside, let's say if you talk of Uttarakhand, you go to, let's say, Dharma Valley, or you go to very remote areas which take a long time to move. Do you see the difference there as well? And how will you map that? Because that could be an interesting part of the whole. Yeah.
I don't think so. I can answer you to the full spectrum that you have raised the question. To the limited experience that I have, I can talk from there. So I have been to the remotest part of the Uttarakhand, which doesn't have access to electricity, and it doesn't have access to network, phone network, cell. इंटरनेट तो बहुत दूर की बात है, कॉल भी नहीं कर सकते हैं आप वहां से. This example of Bharkot that I showed you was, it's actually, Bharkot is a district. There is this one particular village which actually, the last stoppage before the trekking, it doesn't have electricity, doesn't have, and still you see a concrete construction practice happening. You don't see timber construction, you don't see the traditional knowledge system being practiced here. So I don't think so not having access to the outer world limits your response of what should be my construction system. But whereas on the other hand, where Bhutan had the access, they chose not to. They had a very strict protocol of not getting things from us, not getting influence from there, and that's a very different mindset. People, I will not say they don't have the aspiration, but even the aspirations are dictated of what the kind of house you want, what the kind of job you want. So yes, again, the building bylaws and the protocols do play a role, but I don't think so. Not the remoteness of it has a role to play in restricting or allowing that traditional knowledge to flow or stop.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any more questions do we have?
Hi, Sobhya. Actually, I had a question. I'm wondering if actually Piyush is here. Srijani, you said something, if I'm not mistaken, about how typology is also linked to um, the construction system, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Piyush, in his proposition from several weeks ago now,
Mm-hmm.
is almost dissolving this idea of clear typologies. And I'm wondering if the two of you could actually give some light on whether, what is type. Also, we are trying to answer this question in our theory and method class. So I have a vested interest in this, but it might be interesting I don't know if Piyush is around actually. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
here.
Hi. I don't know
Yeah,
if the
so,
you could actually do it together or whatever. It's not really a
so,
question. I'm just putting the two of you
uh,
together in the ring.
no, so what Srijani's point was about typologies was in Bhutan. Of course, I was also there. So, yeah, am I audible? Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
Yeah, every building looked the same. I mean, be it a house, be it a hotel, be it a school or a hospital, they all looked the same. Uh, but I would add to that, they looked the same, but it's up to who is looking at them, the ways of seeing basically. I mean, so maybe they are not seen as the same by the users. Maybe for the outsiders, we look them as same buildings, everything is same. Of course, there were differences in internal spaces and all that. That's one point about those buildings, but about typologies, like I did talk about sacred and secular and how they were overlapping or sort of there were no boundaries between those typologies. I mean, I think every building is there just built typologies. I think it's just about how we use them and their spaces, right? It's about how much time one is spending. I mean, if it's a public, then it's you're crossing, you are spending some time. If it's a residential, you're spending more time. If it's institutional, there is a different purpose, but you are also spending time there. Yeah. I mean, in that way, one can start seeing that they're buildings. They're buildings for us to stay and do something. They all are the same. They all are the same, basically. One can dissolve this idea of typology also. Why not?
Okay. Maybe maybe it's the place what Piyush is saying from the state from the place of habiting the space, and at the end I'm going to use the way the building it is, and it's to me it's the same. But maybe I am taking a step back and before the building is made, and I am making now the decision that I am making a house, I'm making an institution building, I'm making a public building. What type of material I will choose, what type of construction technique I will choose, what it will allow it to do that after 50 years also the house still remains the same, what it will allow you to the library to keep remain as a library after 50 years also. So maybe I am a stage before that I'm talking about, not I'm still not occupied the space and I've been habiting the space.
If you have time, I just want to add one thing. I mean, is that when we look at this typology, I mean, sometimes I give this example also. Like for the first time, humans, when they started to know that there has to be a space, that habitation. Maybe it started raining, they ran into a shelter, they ran into a cave. The first sense of security, probably they didn't know at that point of time, what is it? But okay, fine, the rain is not touching me. There was a wild animal, now that wild animal is not able to catch me. So the first sense of, okay, the sense of a place, space that is, I'm secure. So that becomes the first residential typology. Maybe, then he gained knowledge and he started painting on the wall, institutional typology. Then he got to know certain medicines that if I sort of grind it or something, then I can use it on my injuries. So you will see many prehistoric sites had this little sunken stone thing, they used to do that grinding of herbs and all that. So that is hospital. So I'm just seeing in one tiny space of a natural rock, naturally cut cave has all the typologies. I mean, and they started worshipping. And just giving an example that there are no typologies we can discuss in that way also. But yeah, interesting presentations, Srijani.
Yeah, and I think it has been interesting because earlier I started with a very small idea, and it's only went through the SSA factor which actually helped you to polish and refine and hit the exact research question that you're looking for. Of course, it's still a lot of miles to go from here, but it really helped you in disintegrate and actually the SSA factor that we did was really helpful. Learning from your colleagues as well, Amrita ma'am and the rest of us, actually brainstormed together on each of these topics. So it helped in clarifying a lot.
So just wanted to mention, Srijani, that we are doing a studio on Garhwal this semester with BH. So will be good to get you into the studio for a little input for the students.
Definitely, ma'am, definitely.
Okay, so Sanya have written something. She says, interesting presentation, Srijani. Imani ma'am says, quite intriguing, thanks. And Tapasya is kind of also, there's a remark by her. She says, let the conclusion be there is no typology. We're looking at ambiguity, adaptability, and multi-purpose in the future. Radha have also written something in the box. I guess my question is trying to figure out the contours of typology, definition with respect to construction, which is Srijani's focus. I think, I don't know, Srijani would agree to that. Tapasya writes, I mean, the two of them discussing this further may bring out how in the past as well as we are looking at multi-purpose spaces. So quite an interesting discussion presentation today. Thanks again, Srijani. Do we have any other question, or should we?
If I can make some concluding remarks, I think it was interesting, of course, the ideas, but I think you need to kind of situate your interest within, firstly, the larger discourses that are happening, in sociology, because you're moving into different disciplines, which is a good thing, but there are discourses around this that are already happening. So I think for any serious research, one needs to engage with the current discourses to just situate yourself so that it doesn't come across as really, one's own opinion. I mean, that's okay. I mean, you will go there. I'm just saying that so that those will be the next few steps. And is architecture permanent, building to adapt, form or function, what comes first, so there's, the argument between nurture and nature in shaping human beings and buildings, the passive active agency of human being society in shaping the environment, the non-linearity of history. I mean, I'm intrigued why Piyush is mentioning, the first instance when somebody moves into the cave. I mean, is there a film on that? Can we see when it happened and how it happened and who's saying and who is that first person? So also, you need to qualify who these people are. You keep mentioning people. And in your head, each time you mention people, there'll be different sets of people. Yes. And that needs qualifying. Similarly, buildings looking the same now. Of course, if everything starts looking the same to you, it speaks more about yourself than the material. So if somebody were to come from Mars and look at human beings, they will think, the whole Earth has same types of human beings. There is no difference. So when we look, when we look at habitat or buildings that we're not very familiar with, everything looks the same. Like to an untrained eye, all temples look the same. All Shikhara temples look the same, but they're not the same. Each So it tells more about one's own eye than it does about the material, the sameness or the difference, or and who are these people who are looking, and what are they looking at? So what is their context? I think these are some questions that you may want to engage with to further develop your. And there is a lot of work done. Some lots, I'd say, in art historical field. I think architecture history is still not found its feet in methodological terms, in terms of approaches. Art history as a field that deals with material culture is way ahead. So I'm remembering Richard Davis' work on Lives of Images, where he looks at and I was influenced by that when I looked at Govindev temple, that these images have a life. They are brought from somewhere, put somewhere, their meanings change, their use changes, then they may end up being in a museum, that's another life. So this is something we also talked about when we discussed the authentic moment, that authentic moment is not a singular moment, that it can happen in many moments in a life of a building or an object. That it's authentic moment is when it is alive, really. Um, and then there's another work by Michelle O'Malley on called The Business of Art, where she looks at really the how the production and the production and the management of producing artworks within Italian Renaissance, within the guild system of Italian Renaissance, influences the work. And it's not just the artist's imagination, just producing a painting himself, and just selling it. In fact, all the points you raise about economics, about production systems, about who is commissioning, who is buying, what is the, whether a pigment is available or not, influences the color that the painting has. I mean, little, common sensical things like that. So you may want to kind of engage with works like that, in case you don't find, also if you find similar works in the field of architecture, that may help you develop. I think it's a very important field. Also, there is a student of Peter Scriver who PhD student. I think she has worked on how within one's own lifetime you dwell in various kinds of houses and domestic environments. And so she.
Very interesting.
That's very interesting because her thing was very tight. When you make a thing tight, it's a well. So you dig deep, and she looked at 40 families and how the grandmother had moved from almost a countryside sort of a thing to a semi-urban and to an urban, to ended up in an apartment, and then and moves to an old age home. So within one's own life, your domestic situation or environment changes, and why does it change? How does it change? And you moving from various styles also. So you may want to look at that also. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Vibhuti ma'am, for your concluding remarks. So I think we can close for today. We can close the presentation proposition. Thank you, Srijani, again. And see you guys.
Thank you, Sophia.
After 2 weeks. Good day. And Thank you, Professor Usavra, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
You're most welcome, sir.
Oh, great talk, Srijani. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Just stop the recording.